Hello, everybody, and welcome to APPA's webinar session today, Community Corrections Virtual Roundtable on the Coronavirus Pandemic. Real quickly, I'm Travis Johnson. I'm a Grants Program Associate with APPA, and we're glad you're all here today. Before I turn over to our facilitator today, I just want to go over a few quick things before we get started. Everyone's microphone should be muted, but please just double check. Also, on the side of the GoToWebinar panel, on the handout section there at the bottom of the panel, you'll find a PDF attachment with a short bio and picture of all the panelists in the webinar today. In case you guys want to watch this later or send it to one of your coworkers or something along those lines, we are going to record this webinar today and distribute it through all of APPA's usual channels and house it on our APPA COVID-19 resource site. Lastly, please feel free to submit any of your questions throughout the discussion in the question pane of GoToWebinar, and it'll send us a little prompt, and we'll try and answer it if we have time. Also, if you have any technical difficulties, please just shoot us a message in the chat, and we'll try and help you out. And with that, I'm going to hand it over to APPA's Executive Director, Veronica Cunningham.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Community Corrections Virtual Roundtable on the Coronavirus Pandemic. I have just a couple of brief remarks before we get to this crucial conversation. First, this panel discussion is going to be moderated by Dr. Brian Lovins, who by day is principal at Justice System Partners, and in his spare time, he serves as president-elect of APPA. He and other members of our board, specifically our executive committee, are panelists, including the president, Tim Hardy. Panelists, I want to thank all of you for taking time out of your extremely busy schedules to be here. As community correction leaders, I know your plates are quite full at this point. Secondly, to the audience, thank you for connecting today and for your overall support of APPA. Of course, we are ramping up our work to assist in the development of the community corrections workforce. By enhancing our training portfolio, we're also going to continue to serve as an advocate and voice to the field. Now, routinely, APPA finds resources for our members. And as we're navigating this COVID-19 space, we've created a resource page on our website. We've also launched an online survey, and we're going to continue to provide information to you as it comes available to us. In the name of this newly enhanced virtual world we're living in, we're going to offer some free webinars from our library this month, as most are working remotely. And also we're going to launch our anniversary webinar series later this week, or actually next week. Now, as I pass the baton to our moderator, I want to do one last thing. I want to just thank all of the POs for the work that you do every single day. And now I know some of you find yourselves on the front lines during this crisis because you're providing support alongside some of the typical first responders. Your jobs were challenging before COVID-19, and they will be even more so when this is behind us. So stay safe and healthy, and thank you for joining this discussion. It's all yours, Dr. Lovins.
Veronica, thank you very much, and I really appreciate your leadership through this time. I think folks in the community really are doing an incredible job of protecting their staff and those that are participating in the programs and justice involved individuals, and I really appreciate everyone joining us for this conversation. Just to reiterate, I have found, I know that the Connect APPA website for the COVID-19 information has been incredibly helpful. We do have a survey up there as well that's compiling information about your agency and your needs. And we have several foundations and funders who are interested in helping connect people to money as needed and within the organizations, within local and state systems. And so please make sure that you fill that out and let us know what you need within the field. One of the things I think that came out of this conversation that is really incredibly important, and you'll hear from our panelists here in a minute, is that there is no playbook for this. Right? No one was planned or prepared for something to this extreme. I was the assistant director down in Harris County during Harvey, and this doesn't come anywhere near the devastation that we faced in Harvey. We're talking about a national, really, time where folks coming together and learning from each other is incredibly important. And so none of us have the answers. You'll hear from the panel. We've tried things haven't worked, things have worked. And so you're going to hear kind of in real time and really in a true way of how our panelists are dealing with some of the issues that they face. And so on the line, I'm going to have folks walk through and introduce themselves just briefly. They're going to introduce their name and title so that you can hear their voice if you can't see the video, so that you can start connecting names to faces and to sound. So Amber.
Pijo Wamawa, me, Amber Torres, me Nania, Nu, Agata Katapoina, be Nu, Agagwe. Good morning, everyone. My name is Amber Torres. I'm the chairman for the Walker River Paiute Tribe in Schurz, Nevada. Thank you for the opportunity. I feel honored and blessed.
Anna.
Let me unmute. Hello, everybody. From New York City. As you know, we are in the midst of quite the intense crisis here, and I look forward to sharing whatever bits of wisdom or experience we've had so far. If it can help anybody stem the tide in your area, that'd be great. And I hope everybody's safe and staying healthy.
Good afternoon, everyone. This is Beth Skinner. I'm the director of the Iowa Department of Corrections. Been working at corrections for about 18 years. Along with what Brian said, I think it's important, we realize there's really no playbook for this. And as we move forward and have these discussions and probably more discussions after this, I think we rely on our instincts and best practices and the research and the experts, and we join together as one big family, and we'll get through this. So I'm happy and honored to be part of this team here today on this panel, and thank you all for joining us.
Russ.
Hey, Brian, Russ just sent an email. He's not going to be able to attend.
Okay. Stephen.
Good afternoon, folks. My name is Stephen Sal. I'm the Chief Probation Officer for Orleans Parish in Louisiana. You folks were just in our backyard to have the last winter training, and we enjoyed having all you folks here. I'm on behalf of Pete Freeman, our director at this time. And just like everyone else, we're just trying to figure it out. Biggest concerns that I'm dealing with today is the stress of dealing with technology, as well as trying to maintain lower stress for staff and maintain their safety. So those are some of the things I know we're all working on and working with. And I believe, as Beth said, we're all working together, and we're going to get through this together by sharing ideas. And great to have this opportunity today to be a part of this panel.
Susan.
Next. Sorry. Hi, everybody. I'm Susan Rice. I am the Chief Probation Officer in Miami County, Indiana, and the Vice President of APPA right now. I'm from a small department, so we don't have an HR department. We, kind of get by with what we have with IT needs. And so hopefully I can help a little bit with some of you that are from smaller departments with some things that we've been able to do and figure out. And just appreciate everybody being on the call. Shows us that you're interested in trying to help your departments and figure out how we can all best move forward.
Tim.
Hi, folks. My name is Tim Hardy. I am the Juvenile Court Director in Yuma, Arizona. It's one of the 15 counties in Arizona. I'm also the current president of the American Probation and Parole Association. I just wanted to say that, in thinking my way through this, the first thing that I thought about doing is put myself in their shoes. Sometimes it's easy to make a decision, but I found that involving others and realizing just what that change means to them has been very helpful for us. Thanks, Brian.
Awesome. Thanks, Tim. And thank you, panelists, for taking your time out of your busy schedules. I know that all of us have lots of competing pieces to our jobs, and so I think this is incredibly important. And with that said, Erica Pruitt, the director of Multnomah County Department of Community Justice and a past president for APPA, was scheduled to be on, but was pulled away with COVID issues, as well as Russ Marlin, the deputy director of Field Operations and Administration with Michigan Department of Corrections. So I want to thank them and keep them in our and our thoughts as they maneuver through the day and potentially may be able to join us later into this call. So to kick off, right, so we have put together a kind of discussion points around 5 major areas of our work. And the first one, where I think is incredibly important, and I'm quite excited really that this is the first side of it, because as panelists, we all agree that without staff, we can't help anyone, and they're our primary resource for helping the community and ensuring that people in need get the services that they have, but they have to be in a place of healthiness and support as well. And so I want to open up to the panel, my first conversation about, just tell me about how your staff are doing. What are some things that you've done to help kind of, settle them and get them moving, but ultimately, just how are they doing in their day-to-day work and their lives?
I can go ahead first, Brian, if that works for you. I think this is, COVID-19 is such an unprecedented time for us at work in corrections. We're used to battling things that we can see, or and we're in a very unpredictable time. So that makes a lot of people anxious, because we're used to concrete things and dealing with things, when now we know there's some uncertainties around the work that we're doing. I think it's important to have constant communication with staff. The more communication, the better, is what we're finding out. You don't want to leave people to make assumptions and then they end up filling in the blanks, which is never a good thing. But I think what's really important in terms of staff wellness is to remind people this is a marathon and not a sprint. Also during this time, we don't have the playbook, as you mentioned, Brian. The thing is that since we don't have a playbook, we're going to make mistakes, and we're going to have to, as you say, be comfortable being uncomfortable, and fail forward all these implementation things, and be forgiving during this time with each other and our staff, because we are going to have to make decisions that aren't out of a playbook. And so I think it's really important to support staff through this time and say it's okay. We don't, we're going through this as a team. We make these decisions. We might have to pivot, be nimble, be flexible. But I think for them to know that they're supported in terms of what they're giving and what they're doing during a time like this is extremely important, I think, from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, if I can, I agree with everything that Beth has said in terms of communication has been tough. Here the numbers, as you know, are staggering. So the more like our staff hear about sister agents, brethren agencies, getting hit really bad. We're at about 17 positive cases, and that's not even counting all the people who are home sick who may not have been tested. So there's like a lot of anxiety around not just, what's happening out there, but each other. So what I've been trying to do certainly is to send all staff emails at least 3 times a week. I give people the numbers as best as I can, but it's hard because the message is ultimately, I can't protect you, as the leader of your agency, I can't protect you, but we're all in this together, and we can try to set up like the mechanisms by which to do certain things. So one of the things we've done, I'll just provide a little thing. We're in a Office 365 platform. So there's this, it's actually not through that platform, but another thing that my IT people, I just realized, did, which is create a form that we provided a link to for anyone who wants to share something like a self-care activity they're doing, or words of inspiration for others, or be able to, to do different things, because we've also had staff who are losing relatives, to the virus, and they're mourning and they have to deal with stuff. So it's, it's a relentless assault on the psyche, as well as, the actual physical manifestations of this. So I don't think I will ever be able to do enough to ensure their wellness, but we're certainly trying, with various little things to communicate our concern and our support for them.
Hey, Brian.
I think that's real quick, Tim, just before you go, and I definitely want to hear, Erica Pruitt was able to join us So I'm quite excited to have her part of the panel as well. Erica, do you mind just briefly introducing yourself so they know your voice and can connect you up?
All right, can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. So thank you. I just apologize for my delay. My name is Erica Pruitt, and I am the director of the Department of Community Justice in Multnomah County, which is the Portland metropolitan area. Yes, this has been a very surreal time, and it's challenged us to work differently. And I'm proud to say that we've been able to pivot as an agency pretty quickly to working differently and communicating differently. And so I am very honored to be on this call and to share whatever information that we can share from our perspective.
Great. So Tim, tell us a little bit about what you've been doing in your agency.
Well, you know, I think what Beth and Anna have said about, you know, the work related, that is so important. Excuse me, one of the things that I did was whenever I hire somebody, I always tell them that they're important. Their job's important, but they as a person are important. And not all the time is work the most important thing. So I wanted to show that I care about our staff and not just talk the talk, but walk the walk. So I started at the beginning of our phone list, and I went and I called everybody on the phone list. And I started off by saying, you know, how are you doing? Well, they thought I was asking how they were doing in work. I said, no, I don't want to talk about work. I want to talk about you. How are you dealing with this? Is there anything that we can do as an agency to help you out at home? Because let's face it, none of us want to be doing what we're doing right now. But everybody's dedicated and they're pulling through. But it's hard, and it's harder on some than others. But I think if we as leaders show that, you know what, we understand. We have to think as if we're in their shoes, and we have to sometimes put things aside. And I also have been making decisions. It's almost like, okay, I need to make a decision. So sometimes it's better to ask for forgiveness than permission, because you don't have time to discuss a lot of things. And so it comes out. But and I've been doing that, and I don't think any of us want somebody as a leader that can't make decisions. And really, we wouldn't be here. But we need to realize that people are people, and we care about them.
No, I think that's really, really right on point. And all of you guys, you know, we can't forget that our staff are human beings and they're not robots, right? And that, you know, I think about even as I homeschool with my kids and think about how I owe the teachers $1,000 each as bonus points because, you know, they're a pain in the ass. They're still kids too, right? They're 12 and 7 and 10. And they don't know how to handle this. And so we've got to be the leaders in that time. Steve, why don't you tell us a little bit about how you've been dealing with stress? Because we all know that it plays out in different ways.
Yeah, sure, Brian. So one of the biggest stressors I think that we had is statewide. Well, let me back up. In 2016, New Orleans Office of Probation lost our lease and we became homeless. So we had to work remotely. So we kind of had an advantage in the situation when the doors got locked and said, okay, everybody, skeleton crew work from home. Unfortunately, every state agency did as well. And so immediately the platform for the virtual network was so overcrowded, nobody can do anything. And that led to a ton of stress for a lot of folks. Just being the sounding board, I think Tim kind of said it right, you know, just let folks come in and just let them debrief, or you call them. Tim, I got to say that, you know, when we had our call on Friday and you talked about calling every one of your staff people and having that conversation, it truly inspired me to do the same. And it's been interesting conversations for sure to hear, you know, once you can convince them that you're really just checking on them, and then they open up. And it was nice that, you know, several of them wanted to check on me as well. But Brian, you know, some of the days I have about 20 agents that are rotating in and out of the New Orleans Convention Center, where they've put up a shelter for those recovering from COVID that don't need major medical care. So I'm running the office and I'm also overseeing that entire operation. So days are very stressful. One of the things is just finding that amount of time to decompress. For instance, the other day when we first got handed the task, of course, a lot of scheduling, a lot of phone calls. So I simply just sat on the front porch and watched some lizards running around through the garden for about 15 minutes. And the wife felt like she was a little concerned, and I'm like, it's okay. I said, I just need a few minutes to really think much about nothing, just to decompress. And something we've also done as a family is just started doing, 300, 500, even 1,000-piece puzzles, just working on it together and just doing those little tasks where there's some completion to stuff. Because right now there's no completion to anything. And, we're all task driven and we all want to complete tasks well and timely. And none of that is happening right now. So it's really kind of putting all of our world in kind of a kilter. And I think just, taking the time. And then one last thing, just being transparent with staff as well. Letting them know, hey, I'm stressed as well, and here's some of the things that I'm doing to decompress, and letting them know, yes, I am the leader, but I'm human, and I'm struggling with this too, and it's okay if you need to talk to me, or if I need to talk to you, I just might call you. But just letting them see that, although I am the leader, we deal with stuff as well. Obviously, probably more stuff sometimes, but really just trying to find that time. I try to make sure that even though I stay a little later every day, when I get in the car and leave the parking lot, that everything that was here is left here. And I don't normally do that every day. I normally will drag some stuff along the way and phone calls and stuff. So just making sure there's time for your individual self.
That leads to a really, I think, an important piece, right? And we all have to be healthy. Right, you can't make good decisions when you're unhealthy, and it takes. And I think this tells us about that time more so than normal worlds. But even outside of the COVID, our staff, our administrators, all of our staff have to be in the best place they can to be able to serve the people around them. We have a range of organizations, size, location. Can you talk a little bit about how you guys have dealt with communication and sharing information with staff? And are there examples where folks have felt like it's too much information or not enough information? Because we all know that, in our world, you can't fix everyone, you can't, give everyone the same solution and everyone be happy.
So Brian, this is Erica. One of the things that we've done, the way we had to change our services in Multnomah County was the majority of our staff are teleworking. We have some essential services where, like our detention facility and our pretrial and recog units that are on site. But for the most part, when people can telework, we're having them telework. So communication for us has been has to be very intentional. So we've been doing a lot of conference calls. We're using Google Hangouts. We're using WebExes. We are really trying to make sure that the connection is really what is focused on, as opposed to a whole bunch of emails. So rather than me send out an email, I'm trying to be a part of the team meetings that my staff are having weekly with their teams. So communication and the intentionality and the connection is really what we're focusing on. We have multiple groups meeting every day. And so part of the reason why I was late to this meeting was really because I was on another conference call talking about our COVID-19 response and checking in on people. So we've actually prioritized that. Another way that we're communicating is we have a department newsletter that we've now begun to disseminate on a weekly basis, really giving people updates about COVID-19. So it's not a collection of a whole bunch of emails that people are sending out, but there's one area where we can share the information. And I'm happy to say that our county is also doing that. And there's also another group of our staff who are working in shelters that we're standing up in Multnomah County to increase social distancing in our shelters. So we have a lot of staff that aren't even doing the DCJ book of business, they're doing the county's book of business. So being able to connect with them and saying thank you is a really a big deal. So I love what Tim is saying about calling every employee. That's inspiring, Tim. I think I might take your idea to continue that connection. And I think that when we're talking about the stress, and the last thing I'll say is that people are, what we're hearing from people that are teleworking, that are introverts, is sometimes getting out was their social connection. So there is also our staff that are also feeling socially isolated. And so that connection and that communication is even more important.
Yeah, Erica, this is Steve. Just a real quick, our agency has all of our staff have radios for when they're working that they can connect with the local sheriff's office or police department. So we went to one of those talk channels and actually just did a staff meeting via that radio, and that way everybody could hear questions and feedback, because we don't have the platform to do the group meetings just yet. But I knew that they were getting bombarded with emails and text messages, and eventually you just shut that off. So this at least got a way to hear the voice, and everybody could hear the same questions, because of a lot of the emails I get are the same things anyway. So that way all staff have everything answered and we're up to date, within about 30 minutes of using that police radio, but on a talk channel. It was just a platform we thought of that worked out really well for us.
Along that, oh, go ahead.
Okay. Again, my situation is a little bit different because I'm the tribal chairman here on the reservation. And not only do I have employees, up to 100 employees that I have to look after, but I've got a whole slew of 3,600 members, maybe 900 living on the reservation that we're trying to administer. So when you say communication, that's huge, because not only do I have to keep in contact with all of my essential staff that's still on and make them feel safe and sound and that their safety is being protected. We're trying to rotate shifts so that everybody gets some downtime with their family at home, while still continuing to serve the public, and just encouraging exercise, in a safe environment. Again, spending and enjoying and appreciating that time that they have with family. You talk about children's homework, anywhere else that would be stressful, but, appreciate it, because, tomorrow's never promised. But, so taking that into perspective, also having to communicate with that many tribal members, a majority being elders and most vulnerable, is very, very challenging, so we've been trying to send out mailers, to everybody's boxes. We also talked about the challenge of sending out too much information, scaring everybody, putting a panic. But, we're doing the best that we can here with our incident command team that's taken over. And, we are being looked at as a best practice in Nevada for what we're doing and how we're moving forward to be assertive and lay down what we need to do to protect our people, but also, sending out best practices on what they can do as well. So, again, I commend all of you for the work that you do, because it is very stressful, and you do need to make sure to take that time for yourself, for self-wellness, before you can start dictating to everybody else what we're going to do.
Brian, can I add just a really quick thing to that? I think it's really important that we're not just communicating to staff, but with them, and that we're really listening to them and what they need. And, a lot of times they have great ideas that we don't always think of. And so I think that back and forth, not just checking on them, that's super important. But, how do we do this? How do we figure out this? Because a lot of times some of mine have come up with ideas that I never would have thought of. So that part of it's really important too. And just, I keep going back to the, when you get on the airplane and they tell you, if the plane's going down, you got to put your own mask on first and then take care of everybody else. And I look at this in the same way, that we have to put our mask on first, then we got to get the mask on our staff members, and then they can, help deal with our clients that are out there.
Very right.
So I want to shift a second to actually talk about the justice involved folks we serve, right? We've talked about the organization and the staff, and I think it's also important to recognize that, in this time, right, we're dealing with human beings also, right? And that I think sometimes as a system, we may happen to lose focus on that. And this may be even a time where we really double down on it and recognize that there are stressors beyond prevention and needs that folks have. Can you talk a little bit about what your organizations have done to help manage that and to adjust for folks that cross generations, right? We have young folks on all the way up to folks that kind of fifth generation folks into on supervision.
I can start first, Brian. I think one of the things is many of us already deal before COVID-19 resource challenges, right? Now with COVID-19, we even have more resource challenges when it comes to jobs, getting, a lot of these people work in the service industry, which a lot of service industry is closed right now and are losing their jobs. A lot of people, a lot of these individuals that are under our supervision have issues around problem solving and impulse control. And then you add on a layer of stress of uncertainty in COVID-19, it really can put people in a spin. So I think it's really important at this time that, for probation and parole to really think about how can we best support these individuals. Let's listen to them. Let's use our skills. Let's use our core correctional practices. Let's be a coach. Let's be more flexible in terms of our supervision conditions and not be violating people because maybe you're having them come to the office. We just have to be more flexible and nimble during this time because it's difficult for us just functioning, in society. But imagine if you don't have those coping mechanisms, it's much more challenging. So I see us being there more of a support than anything else and helping them get them through this as well.
Yeah, I mean, we've been discussing same kinds of things as Beth has said, because now a lot of people will not have jobs, don't have jobs. They're not going, it's not, their routines were also upended in many ways, right? And so it raises the question of, this is related to how do we do our work also in this new normal, if you will, in the sense that we're trying to sort of shift the focus to the opportunity to build a relationship, right? The opportunity, and sometimes things are so crazy in the office half the time and people come with like the most immediate thing that is facing them right now. And while that is still there, we have an opportunity to sort of say, okay, so let's look at the bigger picture and start planning for what recovery might look like, help them on the support side again, because a lot of people are losing family members to this or have sick family members or other, issues that balance of, support and engagement is really important right now, as opposed to the referee part of our job, if you will, to continue on the coach referee, continuum, because there's just no places to go either for services. That's the other piece that is very difficult for our clients, in terms of where am I going to get the support if I have a substance use issue or some other, personal or emotional issue. Mental health, provision is going to be very challenging. And so as much as we can be the person they can talk to, that's kind of what we're going to need to be.
Thanks, Anna. This is Erica. I agree with Beth and Anna. We are, it's kind of an interesting virtual world right now where our staff are checking in by phone with our clients, but we also have FaceTime. And so I think that we can encourage RPOs who have department issued phones to be able to connect in different ways with their clients, just as they're connecting with others. And I agree with what Susan was saying related to really let's not talk at, let's be with, let's be together. Let's talk about how this is impacting us. And so like I said, I'm on team meetings and I'm really glad to hear the questions they're asking. They're still trying to connect their justice involved individuals to resources. And it's just that we have to be a lot more creative in our collaborations. And the other piece, and Anna touched on this, is that it is very, this is a hard impact on our treatment providers and our community providers. So we're doing a lot of work to be intentional in reaching out to our providers, because it's changing the way we what the scope of services, and how do we support that. And so we've gotten our own county guidance related to that, but we also, like Beth said, we are really talking about one of the changes that we have made is that people do not get a jail sanction for technical violations. So our probation and parole officers are still able to go out in the field to respond to immediate safety concerns. Our juvenile court counselors are working with families, so we want to make sure there's still a connection, but we really don't want people in jail on technical violations. And so we're working with our jails to ensure that our jails are, the population is decreasing. So I think, looking at some of the work and some of the guidance by Exit, we're really trying to, executives transferring probation, we're really trying to engage in some of those strategies during this time.
Brian, I just want to talk just a little bit about, I work with kids. And so when we look at, the teleworking and what our staff's going through, well, I would imagine that for the first little while, kids were pretty excited that they weren't having to go to school. And now that most schools are doing home learning and parents have become teachers like you talked about, and so it's a new world for everyone. And the fact that have been forced to use technology, because all of our probation officers, and from my leadership on down, get out in the field, do your face-to-face. That's the best way. But we're realizing maybe that's not just the best way, because kids love technology. And now that we're using Google Hangout, we're using different modes to connect, the kids are actually thinking, wow, you're coming down, now I can relate to you better. So we're seeing better relationships between staff and our youth. And something that's really interesting to me is, of course, we have a detention facility, so we basically cut it down to just about 8 kids. So we had to release a ton of kids. And probation officers sometimes would use that as, well, you're going to detention. If they didn't use detention, they used it as a kind of hold over their head. Now they can't do that. And kids know that. But even so, with what's been going on, our violations have been less. We were having overdose with fentanyl several times a week. And now that those people that were selling fentanyl, they were going to schools because they were selling to their fellow students. They don't make house calls, so they don't have school, they don't have clients. And so those numbers have dropped down. So we're learning so much. And I think, and I know we'll move to some things that we'll stick with as a result of this, but I see big changes in the way our officers have had to think outside of the box, and they've established better relationships with not only the children, but their parents.
Yeah, no, I think that's really, really insightful. And I agree. I think as an organization or as a field, we've been incredibly resistant, if you will, and I don't mean it from an individual standpoint, just as a field, to technology. And we've been reserved in technology to be more surveillance-based and monitoring-based versus engagement and interaction-based. And I think this opens the door to those conversations, and to really, for us to challenge ourselves on, is this really the way that people interact? I remember in Harris, we changed the dress code for staff, and they no longer had to wear ties and khakis, and we did a survey, and the clients actually had no impact, and in many cases actually improved the relationships between officers and line and justice involved folks. So I think it is a time to really challenge ourselves to think differently.
Brian,
yep.
This is Erica. I just, one of the things that I think is, since we're talking about our justice involved individuals, I also want to talk about the victims, right? So one of the things that we're seeing in our jurisdiction as some trends is that we're seeing less calls to do DHS because kids aren't in school. So when we're talking about family violence and we're talking about things like domestic violence, we're seeing increases in domestic violence. So as we talk about this kind of new normal, I mean, I don't know if we're ever going to be able to go all the way back to where we were, given where we're going. But what does that look like as far as our service providers? It is a barrier. People aren't able to access services as the way that they used to. So are there other ways to be able to connect with families, with our victims as we're moving forward? And so I just wanted to make sure that the victim's voice is also heard in this as well.
Yeah, in terms of kids, by the way, so New York City just put out, which it's a mixed bag, I have to say, but a website called Fun at Home that kids can, sort of click on, and we'll give them possible activities to do, while they're home. And one of the things that we were talking about in the committee that was putting that together is that there need to be a lot of resources on the quintessential, how do you get along with your parents or your guardian or your caretaker in this time? Because, for even the most intact or, close families get to a point where it's going to get strained, and so when we're seeing the types of arrests we're still seeing of young people, are, incidents in the home, sister on sister, sister and brother, kids, parents, etc. And there's not a lot of respite opportunities here. So whatever I don't know what the solution is, but whatever we can do to be able to help young people and their families be able to find rituals, routines, whatever processes that keep them, as stable as possible, is really important. And the other thing that I wanted to say that is not exactly about justice individuals, but relative to staff, is that we're in a unionized practice, and this has been really important for management and labor to work together, because there's all sorts of opportunities to be at odds with, like, you are not providing us with enough PPEs, or that you're like, this is not. And I have to say that we have our union has been fantastic, and they have even put together like care packages, what they call care packages, but that are like masks and whatever they can do also for the union members. We've been working together to do that, because this is also upending their collective bargaining components and all that stuff that are now out the window because of the crisis. So that's really for agencies that are unionized, it's really a time to try to find some common ground with union leadership.
So talk a little bit about, right, so we've talked about staff and agency, justice involved folks. I'd like to spend a couple minutes on what the future holds, right? So Erica had mentioned business is the new normal, and I think we've heard that tagline a couple of times today and throughout the last couple of weeks. What have you guys learned from this process that you think will actually influence the future business and the future way we do work?
I can maybe speak to that a little bit. Like I said, I'm from a small county, and so when this all first started, and I talked to my judges about, I think we need to let people work from home. One of my judges said, "You guys can't work from home. There's no way you can do that." And we learned very quickly that yes, we can work from home. And we were literally scraping together, all the laptops that we had in our office, and people are using their personal laptops and things. We did manage to get department issued cell phones for everybody, but I think for us, knowing that we have that ability now will probably affect the way that we do some things in the future. When we were talking about text messaging with people, I carry a really small caseload still, but I've text messaged with my people quite a bit, and what I'm finding out, they'll tell you a heck of a lot over text message that they won't tell you in person in your office. So I think we may learn a lot of new techniques that actually give us a little better relationship with our clients. And give us an opportunity to get more information from them than what we normally would. So I think, I know for me, it's been a crash course in technology. I think for a lot of people it has. Even just, go-to meetings and Zoom meetings and things like that. We had a Zoom meeting last week with our staff that, we hadn't seen each other in person in a couple weeks, all at the same time. So that was a neat thing for us to be able to do. And I think that's some of those lessons we will definitely take with us into the future. So really for us related to technology.
I agree with Susan on that. I think it's taken us, this period of time has taken us into a whole new level of technology, not just in communicating with each other and with staff, but how we may communicate with the individuals under supervision via technology during virtual classrooms, things like that. I think it's going to really push us to think differently, that maybe not everything has to be done in a classroom or in an office, for example. I also think it's going to change supervision conditions potentially, how we look at supervision conditions that, a lot, I know we have quite a fair share of supervision conditions, and do we need to have all those? Because right now we're being flexible with those conditions, and is it going to tell us something here down the road that are they all necessary? So it might change how we view the conditions of supervision as we move forward through this pandemic.
Brian, this is Steve. One of the things that I'm seeing is, of course, and I'm sure everybody else is retainment of younger staff who may have been a little bit frustrated or feeling not a big part of the team. Now that my more tenured folks are having to lean so hard on technology, and as someone said, we're all crash course on learning a whole lot of stuff quickly. It has empowered those young folks to really be leaders in the office as well, as they help my more tenured folks get adjusted to these platforms and work with them and put them on an even playing field that makes them feel like they're just as important part of the office as everyone else has been or is going to be. So it kind of empowers them to realize that they're an important part of the team, or maybe they felt inferior up until this point. And I'm seeing that really empowering some of my younger agents to really want to step out and think of new ways, like we're talking about. Just, what else can we do is always one of my things. And I have some comments when we talk about down the road that I'll share later.
This is Erica. One of the things that I really like what Steve is saying about the, our younger staff. Like, as we've had to respond to this crisis, we've had actually people who are stepping up in leadership roles that were like, I'm learning something about myself that I never knew. Like, I'm volunteering in our EOC and I'm leading a group of people, and so people are learning more about themselves. So I think it's going to strengthen our staff and strengthen their skills. And the one thing that is just hilarious is that, for me, is that it's taken us like literally 15 to 20 years to wrap our minds around how can we be a mobile workforce in our department. And within a week, we were able to pivot and be a mobile workforce. And so I think that it's going to help us kind of realize some courage that, we can work mobily. We can shrink our footprint in our communities, our carbon footprint in our communities. We can look at our buildings and say, hey, can we work differently? Or do we always have to have bricks and mortar? So I think for us, the biggest thing that my learning out of this is we are going to be probably moving very strongly towards electronic files because, we have all these paper files in offices. And so as people are teleworking, we have people in the offices running around to files and getting files for people. So that's one of the things that I think that we need to really be focusing on as we move into the future.
Yeah, I can say that. I'm sorry, Brian. This is Steve again. In 2016, like we talked about, briefly talked about, we lost our lease in New Orleans. As those closed cases started stacking up, we went from about 20,000 square feet to about 1,400 to work out of. And so those boxes added up quickly in front of the little cubicle I was sitting in front of. And that again, because of the adversity, it makes you think differently. And we started scanning cases back then, at least just our closed cases, to archive them electronically. And now we started in July doing that on the front end. Once the case is fully set up and in place, our support staff is scanning that, and we're just using the scanner on a copy machine and an external hard drive to keep track of that. Of course, we put some redundancy to make sure there's multiple parts of that. But in this crisis right now, I have 5 folks that aren't certified to be able to go anywhere or do anything. And by next Friday, they'll have every one of our active files. So it'll do just that. You'll be able to, through the network, click on a button and access, at this point now, some 16, 17,000 files and grab out of them what you need, save them as a PDF, and send it on its way. So it'll definitely increase our mobility.
Tim?
Yeah, I was just going to say, one of the easiest things for leaders to do is automatically say, we can't afford to get that. And that's always an easy excuse. It's one I never like to use. But I think what I've learned about this is we reprioritize our needs. Where before, if somebody said, well, I could really use a laptop, and we're going, oh, but gosh, that's going to cost over $1,000, and somehow we just bought 40. And so, it tells me that if you look far enough, you can find resources, maybe not to the extent that we want to, but I know our APPA Secretary Joe Russo, if he's watching this, he'll love this bit about technology, because he's been talking that for years. And in fact, that's one thing. APPA has some awesome papers out there about technology and the use of technology. So that's a resource I just want to bring up, because I think as that new norm, it's going to be mobile technology, like Joe has been pretty much preaching for a few years now.
Brian, this is Amber. I think I just want to chime in and say, being a reservation that actually just got high-speed internet on the reservation within the last 2 months, having this capability is phenomenal. People around the nation, they take for granted that they have high-speed internet or fiber, and those capabilities. A lot of our reservations around the nation do not. So when you talk about communication barriers and how do you reach everybody, how would you proceed? This is a fabulous thing, and if everybody could get connected to it, not only staff-wise, community-wise, it is a huge game changer. But I think also just taking into fact that things that you were lax or took for granted before, security measures, sanitation, how we meet and greet everybody, it all needs to be taken in perspective now, because this will be the new normal. It's those heightened securities that we really need to take into account and continue to make that the new normal, across the nation. And it's sad, but probably much needed. So definitely technology is one of them, but a lot of good points were made here today that we can take back and implement into our day-to-day lives to make everybody's jobs that much easier.
No, great compilation of feedback and stories. I really appreciate it. Clearly, all of you are right on the forefront of this, and so thank you guys for that information. I absolutely agree that we've got to think about, from a country standpoint, infrastructure around internet. And I mean, we have, right, it's easy to think that way in an urban area. I live in downtown Houston, but the truth is connections are spotty even here with people, joining. My kids are on, homeschooling online, and they can't log in, and it just continues to spin, as well as rural areas. And so I think we have to rethink how we're connected to people as well. One of the things that I would add to the conversation is ensuring that staff are connected and making sure that they're able to share. We found as a remote or virtual space company that having video chats is incredibly important over voice. That seeing people and just being present with them, even in spaces like this, make a huge difference. So I really appreciate everyone's time on that as well. I've got one last round of questions, and we're going to close up. And so we're going to start with Tim on this. I'm going to pose to each of you a 30-second magic wand question, which would be, what could you add, change, or eliminate if you had to do this all over again?
Well, since I get to go first, I think my magic wand would be, let's go back about 4 months, and this never happened. That's my magic wand. And so I'm sorry if I stole your others, but that's what's most important, what's on my mind right now.
I should have put the asterisk and said you can't undo that part, but Tim beat me to it, so kudos to Tim. Beth, what would be your magic wand?
I think I would have one big magic wand. I think first of all it'd be better communication strategies across from top down across the agency. I think, and also the messaging around balancing public health with public safety, because that's what we're doing with COVID-19 is balancing public health decisions with public safety decisions. I'd also say to challenge staff to push themselves beyond their comfort zone, to be creative in these types of times. It's unprecedented times. To really, we have a lot of creative and great talented staff out there that we have great ideas that we push on them to, come up with ideas and solutions instead of feeding it to them at this point. And I'd say the last thing would be is just technology, just what we've been talking about this whole entire time is access to good technology for us, for staff, and specifically for those individuals under supervision, that they can have technology and use that with us in terms of programming, communication, things like that. So that's my wand.
That's a larger wand than.
Yes, it's a pretty big one.
All right, so Amber, tell us a little bit about what you would add, change, or eliminate if you could go back a couple months and be a little bit differently prepared for this.
I think the thing is just to always try to be prepared. No matter what it is, always be thinking 10 steps ahead. And I know that's hard to say because nobody ever imagined we'd be in this predicament that we are now, but we should always be cognizant of what's going on in our surroundings. Always continue to be prepared for anything at any time. And I think also listening. We heard this was starting back in October and November, and nobody really took it serious. It was very lax at that time. And my thing is, if we would have stepped our game up at that time and really taken it serious like we have now, maybe we wouldn't be as far as we are, but that's probably what I would change is listen and be prepared at all times.
Anna?
Mine has to do with the comfort with technology and widespread use of technology. I wish we had been farther along. We've been tinkering. We should, people should start texting. We got texting capabilities in our database system, whatever, but we were not really acting with an urgency that would have helped us here. Because now we're doing a lot of still coaching people, still it's okay, don't worry, does everybody have the right technology? Do we have the, and if we had been much more advanced by then, that would have been a good thing.
Susan?
Well, I think I would have liked to have had about 30 days to prepare instead of 30 minutes to figure all this out. Obviously, I'm on the same page with everybody in terms of technology. It would have been nice to have had those things in place. But I think too, I was pretty fortunate in Indiana. We've got a pretty close-knit group of chief probation officers, and there are 92 counties here, so there are a lot of chiefs. But we were able to do a lot of information sharing, and so that's one thing that was nice that we did kind of already have set up, and we've shared a lot of plans and things with each other. But yeah, I think just a little more time. But magic wand going forward too. I hope that we remember. It's a horrible way for it to happen, but there's some really good things that have come out of this as well. And I had one staff member the other day say, I realize I've taken a lot of things for granted. So I think we're learning how much we really do rely on each other and how important that is. And so I hope that continues after things get back to whatever our new normal is. But yeah, just a little more time to be prepared would have been nice.
Stephen?
Magic wand is kind of something, two quick parts. The first one is get rid of that saying we can't, which is, because we've never done it that way or we always do it this other way, and change that mantra to why can't we, which will help us propel forward into these kind of situations in the future. And second would be a web page for our particular office. or each office in the state, which would have, you know, a tab for staff info, but also have links to providers and service providers, treatment providers, that when they click on it, they would actually be connected with someone on the other end that could then pick that up and touch base with our folks we supervise to lend that extra helping hand and make those links quick and easy and as seamless as we can, because everyone's using web pages. And so I think that's something that we can look at in the future as a magic wand. How do we figure that out to make it quick, effective, and instant?
And Erica?
If I had a magic wand 2 months ago, I would have, and we've been working here, but it wasn't fast enough, is how do we strengthen our relationship with our health department and in public health as we look at the data on how COVID-19 is impacting our communities of color. How do we connect our work really strongly with the social determinants of health? And then the other magic wand that I would have is really at the beginning of this, having sat down with my research and planning team to set up some metrics about how we're going to evaluate this new normal, and really how does the way we used to do work really compare to what's ensued over the last 4 weeks, and then how do we measure that? We're talking about that right now, but I wish we would have done that sooner than later.
All great points, and I wish I could give you a magic wand, because I think this would help us, the field, and the folks that we serve move forward in different ways. But this isn't the last opportunity. I really like Susan's point of the magic wand goes forward. And so I think it's up to all of us to be leaders in this. If our position doesn't have a leader title, it's also from the ground up. We've heard how folks within the organizations and representatives here, staff have stepped up that aren't in leadership positions and been given different opportunities to really learn and to grow. And so I really appreciate all of your guys' time. I know that it's very precious these days, and you're out saving lives and saving people. And so we don't want to take up too much more time. So I just want to say thank you guys very much. Thank you, APPA. I think the COVID-19 landing page that APPA has put together has been really a lifesaver for me, and being able to kind of connect people to resources. I think as you continue working together, Susan, you had mentioned having professional networks and making sure that we're engaging with other folks who are in like situations. One, just to get support, but also to get ideas and to bounce ideas off of folks to move forward. And so really look forward to these conversations moving forward. And I hope that you join us for the webinar series coming up with APPA. And please feel free to reach out if you have any other questions. We're happy to get back. We're going to take a set of the questions that were asked in chat and feedback some of the answers that we weren't able to cover on the call on the website, so that you have some kind of documented answers to some of the concerns that you have as well. So thanks, everyone, and I hope you have a good day, and please be safe.
Thank you.
Bye.